Brenda Hargrove cut the padlock from Garrett Townsend's farm gate with bolt cutters and walked through as if the land belonged to her. The chain hit the gravel and the gate swung open under the weight of her certainty. She wore a dusty rose blazer with an HOA patch stitched over her chest, pearl necklace, and nude heels that had no business touching farm dirt. Garrett stood on the porch and did not move. Inside the house, his FBI credentials rested on the kitchen counter, visible to anyone who knew what to look for, invisible to Brenda. Far down the county road, a police SUV flashed blue through the heat. The irony was almost absurd. Brenda had come for a surprise inspection, but the real surprise was waiting inside the house, and she was only a few steps away from turning a petty power play into a federal problem.
There's the
Months
red barn.
earlier, Garrett
Are
was
there any cats
rebuilding after a
inside?
divorce
They
that
might
left
be.
him with a quiet
We
house,
can check
an
after.
empty schedule, and too much room to think. He had spent 14 years as an FBI special agent in financial crimes, learning how to read lies buried in records, spreadsheets, and signatures. What he wanted now was simpler: land, silence, and a place where his 9-year-old son Colton could run without looking over his shoulder. He found 47 acres of pasture outside the edge of Ridgehurst Meadows, a subdivision of identical houses, polished lawns, and people who believed neat fences meant moral superiority. The farm had an old barn, a creek in the back field, and enough distance from the subdivision to feel honest. Colton came every other weekend and named the cattle after dinosaurs. For a little while, life felt possible again. Then Brenda arrived in a luxury SUV like she was making a royal entrance, handed him a thick HOA folder, and began speaking with the calm confidence of someone who had never been corrected in her life. The warning signs were there immediately. She looked at his farm the way some people look at a problem they intend to remove. The first official strike came in the form of a fine notice that had no business existing: unapproved livestock, fence appearance issues, agricultural equipment visible from the road. Garrett checked the deed, the zoning records, and the county covenant the same day. His land was zoned agricultural, never joined the HOA, and sat outside every boundary line Brenda claimed to control. He answered with a polite written explanation. Brenda responded with more paperwork, then more complaints, then more penalties, each one arriving through different county channels, so the pressure spread faster than the truth could catch up. She filed noise complaints over cattle at dawn, environmental complaints about runoff, and nuisance claims about property values. County inspectors came, walked the farm, and found nothing wrong. The cattle were healthy, the drainage was clean, the barn was sound, and the records matched the law. But Brenda was not trying to win an argument. She was testing how much paper pressure it would take before a man with a clean deed would start giving up pieces of his life just to make the noise stop. Once the fines failed to break him, Brenda widened the attack. She launched a social media campaign that cast the farm as a threat to children, water quality, and neighborhood standards. She posted unflattering photos of the barn and pasture, cropped so the place looked neglected even though it was thriving. Then strangers appeared one afternoon and started hammering orange survey stakes into Garrett's east pasture as if they were preparing a sale. The map they left behind claimed part of his land fell inside HOA boundaries, but the reference number was fake and the surveyor's license had already been suspended. Garrett photographed every stake, every tire track, every scrap of paper. Then the access road was blocked with cones and a handwritten maintenance sign, forcing a feed delivery to turn around while the cattle waited hungry behind the fence. The whole thing was designed to wear him down through inconvenience, embarrassment, and delay. By then, it was no longer just nuisance behavior. It was a campaign, and the next move proved Brenda was ready to cross from paper harassment into physical interference. The breaking point arrived on a Saturday afternoon while Colton was filling the
You
water
are
trough in the
tampering with a
pasture.
crime scene, ma'am.
Brenda returned without warning, still dressed like a boardroom never ended, this time carrying bolt cutters and a clipboard. She cut through the farm gate lock, dropped the broken chain into the dirt, and stepped onto the property as if the words on her paper gave her permanent authority. The notice in her hand called it a surprise inspection. The barn, the cattle, the fence line, the access road, All of it was supposedly hers to evaluate. Colton froze. Garrett saw the fear on his son's face and understood exactly how far Brenda was willing to go. This was no longer about fines or appearances. She had entered private property, damaged a lock, and done it in front of a child. That moment changed everything. Garrett stopped treating the situation like an HOA dispute and started treating it like evidence of a larger scheme. He had spent years tracing fraud through money trails. Now he had one in his own yard. Garrett
Excuse the
spent the next
interruption.
several days building a file
These
the way
documents
he would build a
detail the
federal
misuse
case.
of public
He
funds by
collected the
the
fake fine
HOA board.
notices, the fabricated survey, the original county plat, the HOA covenant, bank records from farmers who had paid money they never owed, and trail camera footage showing a truck tied to Brenda's husband cutting the fence line at night. Doug Hargrove sat on the county planning commission and had repeatedly voted on rezonings that benefited his development company after Brenda's pressure campaign had weakened the target property owners. By the time the county board meeting arrived, the room was packed with residents, reporters, and officials pretending not to know how bad things had become. Brenda sat front row in her dusty rose suit, confident and polished. Doug sat at the podium with his silver tie and careful posture, ready to push the rezoning through. Then Garrett stood up, laid the documents on the table, and let the room see the pattern at once. Fake jurisdiction, illegal dues collection, fraudulent survey work, conflict of interest. The room went silent. The doors opened. Federal agents entered with a warrant. Doug lost the color in his face. Brenda's expression cracked for the first time. The performance was over, and the people who had tried to control the farm with paperwork were suddenly surrounded by consequences. The fallout moved fast. Doug was indicted on public corruption and fraud charges tied to the votes, land purchases, and development deals he had hidden behind his commission seat. Brenda accepted a plea after prosecutors laid out the false complaints, illegal HOA collections, trespass, and the forged paperwork used to pressure landowners into selling. Restitution checks went out to the farmers she had been squeezing for years. Earl replaced aging milking equipment. Connie planted new apple trees. Wade used a legal settlement to start over on a new piece of land. Even the widow who had unknowingly paid dues received her money back through her family. Ridger's Meadows changed too. The board was replaced, the county tightened disclosure rules, and the local paper spent weeks unpacking how easily authority had been abused under the cover of community standards. Garrett kept the farm. Colton kept naming the cattle. The gate got a stronger lock. The barn got painted, and the quiet that finally settled over the property felt earned, not accidental. Garrett also started a legal support fund for agricultural owners who were being bullied by fake authority and manufactured complaints. In the end, Brenda learned what people like her never think about until it is too late. A clipboard is not a crown, and a deed does not bend just because someone speaks loudly. If an HOA ever tried to outrank your property rights, where would you draw the line?